with you today. I wish I had more time to understand and read and study about your life, but there's just so much that you've done.
I don't think it's too much.
No, it's amazing. I would really encourage everyone sitting here, when you get a moment, please do a Google search on Lieutenant General Sadhna Saxena. And if you're not left feeling wanting for more for yourself and feeling inspired, I mean, it's just incredible. So let's start at the beginning, ma'am. I want to understand from you, you come from a military family. How much of a role did that play in your decision as a young woman to enter the military?
So that played a huge decision because the person who inspired me was actually my father, who joined the Indian Air Force as a doctor in 1956. He actually was the rebel because he came out from what is now known as Prayagraj, Allahabad in those days, where no one of his family had ever joined the armed forces. And it was because of him now that 3 generations of my family are in the armed forces. So it was him. And growing up, since I grew up in an Air Force environment, and I was born before the 65 war, though of course I was only 1 year at that time, but hearing about the 65 war, the memories of that, and actually living through the 1971 war also, and seeing the huge role which my father played in that, and the impact it had on us as a family, I think those were the key inspiring events and happenings in my life, which, sort of made me realize that it's the armed forces I want to join.
Is there something growing up that you witnessed family members in the armed forces doing, which you sort of learned from their experience and you decided that perhaps one day when I'm in their position, I'll do this differently?
See, what I remember, what was very often talked about in my family, so many of them are memories through stories which have been told to us as we were growing up, and some of them are, like I said, real lived memories, was particularly when, when we were in conflict with our Western neighbor and there were air raids going on, there were air raid sirens sounding, and how my father always left us and went for his duty first. So it was always service before self, and how my mother, and we had 3 of us siblings, my elder brother and elder sister, and how we used to jump into the trenches, my mother covering me and my sister, who were the younger 2, with her body, my brother lying on the sides. And what really, sort of was ingrained in me, how my dad, without a backward glance, sort of just went for his work, because he also, being a doctor, was the medical advisor to the commander in those times. And this, I think, was a defining moment. I still remember the things of the 71 war. So this led me to believe that there is a world there which is much bigger. Like the armed forces is not only about wearing a uniform. It's something which is much bigger than yourself. It's your country. And so that really inspired me. And so later on, somehow when I initially joined the Air Force, I met my husband who's a fighter pilot. So it's not only my son who's a fighter pilot, it's my husband also who's a fighter pilot. So we are a, sort of a military family. And the experiences, so this was the role my father played. But as we grew up, we saw the immense role which the other branches of the armed forces played in whatever conflict, whether it was an external aggression, whether it was internal conflicts. So the sort of putting of service before self, I think that was something which made me decide that this is something which I would really like to do in my own life, where, you look at something which, and you put that organization's interest, and in fact, the organization is for the country. So to put the country before the self is something which was ingrained very early, and this is what I always wanted to do.
Lieutenant General Nair, then I want to understand from you. You come from a military family, then you married into now what you've created yourself, a military family, and the tradition continues. But what's different? Is it in the blood? Is it in the psychology? Because like you said, your father, when he was on duty, he was on duty. And I'm sure that it's the same with you, it's the same with your husband, with your son, that when you are serving the nation, then the nation comes first. And that's obviously not something that most of us are able to do. That's why we are not in the armed forces. And it's a huge psychological determination, I would say, that it takes to feel that way. So I want to understand from you, in your assessment, you've met, I'm sure, a lot of families that are not in the military life. What's the biggest difference as far as mindset is concerned?
So the military actually, like I would like to say, any person, whatever he or she develops into is a combination of nature and nurture. So nature is your genes. You're born with something, and nurture is the environment you're exposed to. So I think the difference between military families is because, the military world is what I've mentioned earlier also in one of my talks. It's a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous, VUCA. Nowadays, the word Bani is used more, which is brittle, anxious, non-comprehensible. But that, I think, doesn't fit so well. That's more for the business world. So the armed forces world is a VUCA world. When you are in the armed forces world, you learn to be resilient. So it's very, very important that you are committed, first of all, to the idea of the nation, to the idea of the armed forces, and you're adaptable and resilient. So as children who grow up in the armed forces, I think this is one difference, because every 2 years you're moving to a different place. You are seeing different terrains. You are seeing different, different type of people coming from all over the country. You're seeing different upbringings in different people, but they are all your own. So it is this, I think, actually it is this volatile and uncertain atmosphere, which is complex and ambiguous. So the tolerance to ambiguity, you learn all that. You learn to think on your feet. You learn to have situational awareness. So these are things which it just gets ingrained in you. So it's the nurturing in an environment. Not to say that people in the outside world, outside the armed forces are not like that, because I know there are a lot of challenges in the outside world too. But there are different challenges in the armed forces, and these challenges actually make you very, very adaptable and resilient. And that, I think, is one key difference. You don't expect, that you have to you have to go out, you have to do things. In fact, here I would like to mention something which is the motto in the Indian Military Academy. It is the Chetwood motto, which says that, and this is ingrained in all armed forces personnel, that it is the honor and the welfare and the safety of your country which comes first, foremost, and every time. Then that of the men you command, men or women you command, and last is your own safety and comfort, which will be last every time, all time. So this is something which is just ingrained in you, and this is how you evolve then. So you've seen it as a child. You don't feel anything different. You feel that's how it's supposed to be. You've seen it in your uncles, you've seen it in your aunts. When the men go to war, earlier there were no women in the armed forces. When the men went to war, the women just went around stoically. They had to do, the work went on. The show goes on. I think this is another thing. The show always goes on. No matter if there's been a fatality in the cantonment, number of fatalities, you don't think about that. The mission has to be accomplished. The work has to go on.
Ma'am, you are the first woman Director General of Hospital Services, the first woman Principal Medical Officer for 2 different commands, and now the first woman to hold the post of Director General Medical Services of the Army. There are so many firsts to your name, and like I said, that's why it's really intimidating to even be sitting and sharing the stage with you. But I want to understand your advice to young women today who are looking at a career in the military.
So I would like to say that, it is a career which is extremely rewarding. It's a very rewarding career, but it doesn't come without its challenges. So someone, like I said, who is committed to the idea of this, someone who's resilient, who's adaptable, it is an ideal career for you, because it not only exposes you to the highest level of professionalism, but it also teaches you about leadership. The moment you enter the army, the armed forces, the first thing you become is the leader of the men and women under you. So it exposes you to leadership, it makes you develop courage in the face of extreme adversity. Then sportsmanship, the spirit of sportsmanship, teamwork, adventure, patriotism, of course, is always there, ingrained in every act. So it leads to an all-round development of you. as a personality, I would like to say it is a very rich life, not in terms of rupees maybe, but definitely in terms of the experience you get and the huge, huge quality of life. So it's very rewarding, but you have to be committed to it, and it is challenging, and you have to rise to the challenges day in and day out.
At the same time, ma'am, army and of course the military continues to be still, one can say, a male-dominated field. Of course, more and more women are joining and they are rising up the ranks as well. But how does one, as a woman, then build the confidence to not just be a part of, but to really thrive in what is traditionally in our minds seen as a male-dominated career path?
So, yes, definitely the armed forces all over the world has been traditionally male-dominated, but that is changing, because what the army and what the armed forces, I would like to say, are organizations which value merit. They value competence, they value professionalism, they're inclusive, and they're very diverse, especially if you look at the armed forces of India. They're so diverse. So definitely the scene is changing. More and more when women are coming in. When I joined the armed forces, we were only permitted in the medical branch. Now you have women coming into all branches, including the combat branches. And even in the other ranks. So you have women coming in the other ranks. You have women Agniveers coming. So this change is now happening very rapidly. Earlier it was slow. You know, there were women few and far in between, but now you see the number of women who are there. So I would say that in the next 5 to 10 years, seeing the number of women who are right now in middle managerial positions or in middle positions, they would in the next 5 to 10 years come up on the top and be even more visible. So the thing is changing, and the army, I would definitely like to say, is a very, very inclusive, and it looks at gender neutrality. No gender is to be favored. As long as you meet the standards, that's what's required. Whether you're a male or a female, you have to meet the standards, because the standards are also very high and demanding. When you're defending the nation, your standards, you have to be up there. So whether it's a man or a woman, if you meet the standards, you can join the armed forces.
Ma'am, I have very little time with you. One last question quickly.
Yeah.
Who has been your most significant mentor, and what's the most valuable lesson that they've taught you?
Most significant mentor, I would definitely say, is my father. But I would like to also say that my husband has been a huge support. He and my children, both boys, again, I would like to say, like when you're talking about gender, they never thought there was anything out of the way for their mother going for work, and their mother going on search and rescue sorties, or their mother doing other sort of combat-related work. So while my father remains a defining influence on my life because of his inspiration, my husband and sons have been the wind beneath my wings. And my mother, a homemaker, who stayed at home all her life, but she was the one when in the earlier years of my service, when I felt, oh, it's too much because my children were small, I wanted to leave. She, being a homemaker, said no, just tide by these times. So the challenges will come, just wait it out a couple of years. So I would like to say that my entire family actually has been my mentor.
What a lovely note, ma'am. On a lighter note, your husband, of course, supported you, but see, the husband-wife issues go on everywhere. Does he help you out at home?
Oh, definitely. He definitely helps out at home. Of course, you know, he belongs to a different generation. And now when I see my sons, I feel that they're very involved in, you know, in the home. One is married, the elder one is a doctor, he's married to a doctor. We are very boring that way. The young one is a fighter pilot, he's married to a fighter pilot. So they contribute equally. My husband, for that generation, I think he contributed hugely. And it's because of him, because he said that you can do whatever you wish. They never held me back. So it is all these influences, I think, along with the influences of the armed forces, which have brought me to this place.
Well, what an incredible story. Thank you so much, Lieutenant General Sadhna Saxena Nair. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us at We Women Want 2025. What an incredible woman we have amongst us.